All right. Cool. So I'll just make sure that I am on here. Cool. So just waiting to see if anybody is popping on. But today we are going to be going over how to create forms, which this should theoretically be shorter than my previous lives, but we will see if that's true. Because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I have a tendency to talk for a little while. So we are going to go over some different platforms that I would recommend that you use for the different forms if you are depending on what options you are looking at, and then just some suggestions for what to have on the forms. And I'll show you one thing here in a second. But before I forget, I think that two things are really, really important to have on your forms for being a telehealth provider. Number one is you want to have an emergency contact for your patient. So I'll show you where I have that on my intake form. But emergency contact, name, relation, phone number, just in case anything happens during your session, you know who to call. And then the other thing that I would recommend having on your form is asking for their physical address. So even though it is a telehealth visit, if you're doing telehealth, I would still ask for their home address, or the location that they will be receiving therapy or healthcare services. Again, just in case something does happen, then you can call their emergency contact, and then you can also call 911 and give them the exact location. God forbid, the patient is unconscious or unresponsive or something. So those are two things I wanted to mention right off the bat that I would put on your intake forms, just in case, or even if you are doing mainly mobile therapy or something like that, and you might sprinkle in telehealth. I would make sure to have that information on there. So next, I'm going to share my screen and pull up these forms that I have to use. So you guys have probably heard me say, I love IntakeQ. I think it is amazing. I think it is a really good practice management tool. The only thing that it doesn't have right now is an HEP builder, but honestly, you could, always make up your own PDF or your own resource. And then it does have a secure messaging portal that you can send it to the patient in. So that's one workaround that I have used. But I really like it. And it is the one that I am most familiar with. So this is what I was going to go over today, but I'm sure that other practice management softwares like PT Everywhere would have something similar to this. And if you guys have any questions on them, then just definitely let me know. So this is IntakeQ, and I'm going to be looking over here at my second screen. What's cool is you can make intake questionnaires, consent forms, and then your note templates, which I think I have talked to you guys about before. One thing that can kind of streamline your treatment process is if you already have documentation templates available to you, so that when you're doing your notes, whether it's in session or post session, you can just pull up the template and type everything in, and it makes it really, really easy. So you can see I have a visit note, the quick note, visit note, daily note. I've been using the daily notes more recently. It's more like a SOAP note. So your subjective, objective assessment and plan. And then I also have an evaluation note, but what I typically do, and I can always post this in the group as well, is I have a ready-made template for evaluation with different prompts on it, and then I just handwrite my notes. And then in the patient's chart, I upload the handwritten notes into their evaluation session versus typing up a whole eval, and then I type up all of my daily notes. So then intake forms and consent forms, IntakeQ will connect your intake and consent. So I have like my physical therapy intake form, which I'll show you guys that one. It's connected to the physical therapy consent to treat form. So when I go to send it to a patient, it's just automatically together and you get both of them right there. So I'll show you guys this form. Preview here. Okay, so cool. Looks very official up at the top. Has all my information and my logo, and you can see here the consent to treat. So you can send this right to the client. Like you can see here, it just says send to client, and it'll email it to them right away. Hey, Blair. And I have gotten feedback from patients that they think it is really cool that they can just fill out their intake form on their phone. So this kind of like streamlined intake process is definitely something that is like a plus for your clients. But let's take a look at the consent form. So this is available in the Facebook group, and it's also up on my member vault, so I can send you guys this when I'm done and post a link. Just a copy of like my consent form, and I have information on like what it's based on, but essentially, you know, I certify the information is correct. Privacy and sharing information, the payment and billing policies, I think is very important to have on your consent form so that you are informing the patient, you know, what you expect as far as payment goes. But then my pro tip would be that if it is somebody that, you know, you don't really have a relationship with, or like they don't really know anything about your practice, I would recommend going over the payment and billing policies with them on their first visit. So like not a consult, but like on their evaluation, and just ask them like, hey, you know, did you read over the payment and billing policies on the consent form? Do you have any questions? Because I have run into an issue before with somebody where they signed off on this and agreed to the cancellation policy. And then when I went to go invoice them to collect on the canceled appointment, they got very upset with me, but they had signed off on it. So that was just, it was difficult. And like my professional judgment was I just let it go, because it wasn't, you know, I wasn't going to go through the hassle of like trying to like track it down and everything. But side story. And then this really is important here, photo and video consent. And then I think I have it down here. So I agree or I disagree to my telehealth sessions being recorded. If you are going to record these sessions, you need to have this agreement in writing. You know, and obviously if they say I disagree, you're not going to record their sessions. But if they say I agree, this needs to be here in writing. And then you need to ask before you record, you need to say like, hey, is it still okay that we record? And then you press record, and then you ask again, like just for like proof on here on a recorded session, is it still okay that we record? Just to make sure all of your bases are covered. And recorded sessions can be really helpful, especially if you go over a lot of patient education or show them specifically how to do a particular exercise. Then you can like put it in there. This is what I've done, put it in their Google Drive folder, and then I share that folder with them specifically. And then they can always go in there and look at, you know, the video or look at the session and review the information that you guys talked about, which is cool, you know, compared to some traditional clinics where you may or may not have the time to do that for them. And then this is just like you authorize, you know, photo video consent for like social media for marketing purposes. And then this is the consent to treat form here. And I won't go over too much on what is in here because it is posted in the group, but this is essentially the consent form that I use. And then going back to the intake form, so all of the patient's information, like I said, I would definitely get a home address. Some of this stuff about sex and gender can be helpful, you know, to develop a good relationship with your patient. The emergency contact information, really important. I ask about their work. I ask about like how they heard about me. where they heard about me, medical and health history. Sometimes it's interesting to see like how your patients rate their physical health. Any kind of history with this. These are a bunch of like red flag questions, medications. And then I also like to have this in here. Check below the protected health information, you, the patient, authorized to be disclosed in case of emergency or significant medical event. Obviously, you're going to call 911 if something happens, but I like to put this in here so like the patient understands that, you're going to provide all pertinent medical information where necessary. Yep, and then by signing this form, confirms my authorization to disclose PHI for medical purpose in case of emergency or significant medical event. This is a list of all of the dimensions of wellness, which is something that I try to go over with my patients. And it can also give you like a good background on, their life and how things are going, because we do know that, your mental and emotional health is going to affect your physical health. So, say like somebody goes through this and a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being amazing. If they rate their physical health an 8, but a mental health like a 2, or occupational health a 2, or like family health a 1, that's going to be something that you want to bring up to your patients on their evaluation, and just be like, hey, I noticed that, all of these things were rated really highly, but like your family rating is not that high. Is that something that you want to talk about today? And just make it known that you are there as a support system. Always be asking about stress. It means different things to different people. I don't know about you guys, but I would consider myself a pretty high stress person, and it does affect me and affects my health. So that's something to definitely take into consideration and ask about stress management, tactics, and like possibly work on that with your patients. But there are also people who like mark on here, they're like, no, I don't have any stress at all. So that's just like something good to know, to have more background on your patient. Asking about sleep, because we know that that is vital to recovery. And then asking about diet and nutrition for the same reason, because it's going to affect everything that you're doing. And then what brings you into physical therapy, OT, speech, whatever service you are providing. Do you have any of these concerns? Have you been treated for it before? And then this is an outcome measure that I really like to use. It's called the patient-specific functional scale, and there's good research on it, and it's just really easy. Essentially, like the patient puts something in here, like I have difficulty sitting for 15 minutes. And then they rate it on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being, like I can do it 100% of the time without issue, 0 being I am not able to do it at all. So like the patient could rate it like a 5, like they can sit down, 50% of the time for 15 minutes without having pain or something like that. And then when you go to reassess, you can go directly back to this functional activity that is specific to your patient's life and matters to them, and then compare it quantitatively and objectively and see, maybe now they rated a 7. Perfect. We have quantitative data to show improvement that is meaningful to the patient. Versus some other outcome measures might not be as specifically meaningful. Activity level, what kind of activity do they do? And then, yes, proceed. Close, what goals do they have? This is, obviously really, really important. Again, it needs to be something that is specific to the patient, like what do they actually want to do, and where are you going to take them through this process, and just anything else that we should know. And then as you can see on IntakeQ, they do have these digital signatures. This one's cool because you can like write in it, but you can also type. So it's been cool. Patients have definitely liked it. So that is IntakeQ, and it's really easy to add questions to things, make headers, You just click on add a new question, and they have a bunch of different things. One thing that's cool on this too is you can add a question that is a body map, and it lets the patient like draw right on their phone. They can draw what parts of the body that are hurting them. So let's see, moving on to there. And definitely you guys stop me like here on the live or on the replay, write a comment if you have questions on any of the stuff that I am showing you. And you know, if you would do anything differently. So I know there's a couple of you guys here right now. As far as your own intake forms go, if you already have them, is there anything else that you would add to the intake form or anything else that you guys like to ask? Hopefully you guys don't hear my dog barking in the background. He barks every time a package is delivered. Yeah, let me know in the comments. What else would you add to the intake form? Is there anything different that you would do? So that is IntakeQ. It is awesome. I'm just going to delete this question. Cool. So IntakeQ is on the like more expensive end as far as form software goes. It is something that I really like because I utilize the entire software for practice management. But there are other options that I will show you here in a second that can be a lot cheaper. And it's HIPAA compliant and everything. So next, I think I'll show you Google Forms. So like we've talked about a ton here in the group, and I know that Nathan can go into a lot more detail as far as G Suite goes. Check out his group on G Suite for healthcare providers, I believe. I posted the link in the group a little while ago. But you can use Google Forms as an intake form because it is covered under the BAA that you signed for your G Suite account. You can use this to collect things. So a way that you can use Google Forms is, you know, just it's really easy to make questions. You just click the plus sign and you can decide on what kind of question you want it to be, what kind of information you're looking for. I will tell you too, like just a disclaimer, my intake form is fairly extensive, as you can see. It is a lot of information. It is completely up to you how much of that you're actually going to put on yours. So you could make it like really, really basic and just ask, you know, for like a quick past medical history, red flag questions, contact information, that kind of thing. Or you can make it really long, like mine, whichever one works best for you. But making questions on here is really easy. And then what you can do is ask for email addresses. And let's see. Oh, yeah. You can send the client a copy of their responses, but ask for email addresses, and that will make sure that it is a legitimate email address that, you know, is filling out this form. And then Rob Binding has recommended putting on here by clicking agree below. I agree that the email address associated with this form is mine and no one else has access to this email account, which will help with the privacy factor. Hey, Noel. And it also counts as a digital signature per Rob Binding. That is what I have learned. And then down here, you can add a link to your consent form, like all your policies and everything, and have them read through it. And then again, by clicking agree below, I agree to the information provided to me in the consent form and understand that if I have questions, I may contact my provider at, you know, your email address or phone number. So those are two things that I would put on here if you're doing a Google form. But pretty easy. The one thing that I don't like about Google Forms is that it does not email me when I get a new submission. Like there's no notification, and maybe that's just me that I haven't figured it out. But that's one reason I don't really like it, because then I never like know, because I'm just, you know, all over the place in my day-to-day anyway. I don't know when people are submitting forms unless I go in and manually check it. So by having something that notifies me like IntakeQ, or I'll show you Jotform in a second, then it makes my day a lot easier to get the notification that somebody submitted a form. But Google Forms is pretty easy, pretty straightforward, free also, well, included in your G Suite account. And then the last form submission option that I really like, there are a ton out there, but I really like Jotform a lot. It's basically like Google Forms on steroids is what I would call it. There's a ton that you can do, and they also are offering free HIPAA compliant accounts, I think through the end of July. I could be mistaken on the date, but I definitely got one. It took like a couple days to get approved. You just have to describe like what you do as a healthcare provider. And then it got approved and I can make Jotform HIPAA compliant, which is cool. But let's say I want to create a new form. I can create it from scratch. There's, obviously a couple of different options there. And then you can add your logo, which is cool, add stuff there. And then the way that you use it is by clicking add elements. And then it will already have like these pre-made things for you. This will also integrate with ActiveCampaign. Or like other email management softwares. So if those are things that you use, you can have this form submitted and then the contact will get like automatically uploaded into your email management software, which is cool. But just putting the stuff on here, they just added this appointment feature, which is cool. So you could have somebody like, if you wanted to make a form for like a free consult, this will integrate with your Google Calendar. So somebody could like fill out the free consult form with their information and schedule an appointment right from this form. So you wouldn't even need necessarily like a scheduling software like Appointlet or Acuity or Calendly or anything like that. But so this is pretty cool. And then it does have a signature for a digital signature on here. And then there are just a bunch of other different things that you can put on here, these little widgets, different types of questions you can ask. You can take payment through the intake form, which is awesome. I think the way that you can do it on Google Forms is you would just make a question and then post like your PayPal link. You can make like a personalized PayPal link and just say, like this question is required and you can't submit the form otherwise without payment. But Jotform lets you do it right through the form, which is cool. And you can use PayPal, Square, Stripe, all of these different things. So that's great. And then here's another e-signature thing. And these are just a bunch of other little widgets on here. And one thing that I've heard Rob Binding say as well is you can always put a video onto your form, if it'll let me do this, with instructions on how to fill out the form and instructions on like what to expect on your first appointment. Like that's something that we have definitely talked about before, is pre-framing your appointments so that your patients know what to expect and they don't come into it, if they're doing a telehealth evaluation, they're streaming a bunch of stuff in another room, like the house is really loud or the lighting is really bad or they're not dressed appropriately to, get a workout in or anything like that. You can put like all the instructions in a video, and a video is a nice way to build rapport and build a relationship with a patient. So please let me know what questions you guys have in the comments. I know that this was a live today on how to make forms, which is not the world's most exciting thing, but I wanted to show like a few different options because I have gotten questions about it. And then as far as like example consent forms and intake forms, those are available under the units tab here in the Facebook group. And otherwise, I can post the link to my website too that has a bunch more resources. So I will put that up in just a second. But yeah, that is pretty much it for today. maybe my shortest one yet. I hope this was helpful. And, you know, I need to know what other questions you guys need answered as far as forms go. But these are three really good options, IntakeQ, Jotform, and Google Forms, and that should be plenty to get you started. I wouldn't, go out and try to research a bunch more options. Start with something really easy, and then branch out from there if you feel like it doesn't have everything that you need. So yeah, well, I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day, and then I will talk to you soon.